President Daul, Presidents, Prime Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I'm also, of course, very honored receiving this Merit Award and very grateful to the EPP and its president, my good friend, Joseph Daul. I'm in that stage of my life where you are thanked for the work done. I cherish those moments because it happens seldom. I left office almost a year ago with a good conscience. As President Kennedy once said, a good conscience, our only sure reward. I left office fully aware that the EU institutions are in good hands. Donald and Jean-Claude, both men of action and with strong European convictions. Looking at what they lived through since the beginning of this year, I don't envy them at all, at all. Keeping the club of 28 nations together and being effective is a harsh task. I'm supporting, it's of no help, but I'm supporting from behind. And Joseph Daul asked me to co-chair, together with Elmar Brok, a group reflecting on the future of Europe. What will the Eurozone and the European Union be in 10 years' time? It is wise to think at the future whilst we are in the midst of another crisis. Never forget the longer term. We kept that prospect, José Manuel and myself, during the existential, because it was an existential crisis in the Eurozone, in the years 2010-2013. We were involved in crisis management, but we also strengthened the governance of the Eurozone, and member states reformed their economies. Both actions were successful. Look at the results of Mariano, of Pedro, of Enda, of Nikos, and many others. Even Greece, under Antonis Samaras, was on the way to 3% growth in 2015, until others threw away years of efforts. The Eurozone as a whole is now solid and stable, and we noticed this even during the negotiations with Greece in the summer. During the crisis of 2010-2013, the European Council and the European Commission, under the outstanding leadership of José Manuel Barroso, worked on the single market of energy, of innovation, the digital. Our EU budget focused on competitiveness, plus 39% increase in the expenditures in a shrinking budget. And we launched a roadmap for deepening the economic and monetary union. So we were thinking at the longer term, in the midst of a crisis. The future starts today. You never can change the past. You can only change the future. And we are aware of the challenges of the upcoming decade and decades. Some of them are predictable, and some are even measurable. Climate change, where we are the world leaders, we as a European Union, in the transition to a low-carbon economy, and we are on track meeting our ambitious targets. The other predictable challenge, demographic implosion with all the consequences on the labor market, social security, and of course on migration. And we also know how rapidly the African population will grow, doubling its numbers to 2 billion. Either we support their development, either we face massive migration. Many facets of those problems require a European answer, and we shouldn't wait upon a new crisis to act. We did it too often in the past. The edge of an abyss is not the right place to decide. And we also know that the structural economic growth rates of 1% is too low for maintaining our social models and for providing enough jobs. Reforms at the national and the European level are a necessity. Investing also in education and research is key even in times of fiscal consolidation. It is a matter of choice, the very essence of politics. We have to use the untapped potential of our single market in the key sectors such as innovation, energy, the digital market, telecom, industry, defense industry. We are lagging as Europeans compared to the United States. Dear friends, let us not forget the economy and the economic and monetary union, even if the political agenda is now dominated by migration and by refugees. We know what we have to do. We shouldn't fall into the trap of reform fatigue, especially when economic growth is picking up again. But we need more Europe, beyond also the economy. The crisis in Syria showed that we also need a common and an active foreign and security policy. Foreign policy is more than trade policy, more than human rights, more than development aid. We need to become a real civil power, a regional and global player. We aren't now. A standalone of a member states in foreign policy is even absurd and irrelevant. We have to stick together. Putin will only be impressed by a united Europe by sanctions of all the 28 member states. The refugee crisis demonstrated that we have to play a bigger role in foreign and security policy. It's in our own interests. And our club of 28 nations can still expand if the criteria are met. It shouldn't shrink. So then we would enter in a negative dynamic. And the UK is a great member state and can play even a more prominent role than today. We have to negotiate with the UK in good faith, but keeping in mind the values enshrined in our treaties. And we have to remain an open continent trading and investing as free as possible with other global actors. We shouldn't be afraid negotiating with the United States, with Japan and with China. Of course, we will not give up our way of life and the rules of fair competition. We must remain hopeful people, believing in our basic values, not people who are afraid of the future. We have to remain hopeful people. We are multicultural societies, but based on one civilization. Multicultural, but one civilization. Political democracy, the rule of law, separation between religion and state, gender equality, non-discrimination, freedom of speech and of religion. It is the core of our civilization. It is inspired by our vision on the uniqueness of every single human being. Our humanism is the basis of our political action, and this also applies to those who fled their homes, desperately wandering in Europe. Our policies in general are inspired by ethical idealism and political realism. Let us not forget our ideals in a cynical world. The future belongs to Europe. The cost of non-Europe, not only economically, is extremely high. The eternal peace is daily work. Nothing is definitive in history. We have to be focused on the broader picture, whilst we are absorbed by crisis after crisis, whilst we have to react constantly to new events and evolutions inside and outside Europe, in our neighborhood and beyond. We can only succeed if we have solid European anchors. Dear friends, we will only convince the Europeans of the value and the added value of the Union if we can show results in decreasing unemployment, stabilizing the euro, combating climate change, stopping illegal immigration, fighting fiscal fraud and inequalities, overcoming the refugee crisis, of course, the most immediate task. Failing would make all our countries, and thus the European Union, politically unstable. We can only succeed with European instruments and the European strategy, and with a mix of humanism and realism. The ultimate solution is peace. And there is no peace at our eastern and southern borders. Europe is an island of peace, but we can only remain so if we have a common foreign and security policy proactively and actively engaged in peacemaking and peacekeeping. If Europe is only focused on itself, it will lose itself. If we are only focused on itself, it will lose itself. And finally, the EPP, the European People's Party, will take the lead of Europe as a regional and global actor, a new stage in a fascinating adventure to a more united Europe, our Europe, notre Europe. Merci.